Hi there, it's your Sassy Southern Grandma, Cindy. Thanks for joining us again this week. We are on the third part of our Make 2025 the Best Year Yet series. This week we're going to be talking about maybe the most important part, which is keeping that motivation going as the year goes on, as the months and weeks go on. How do you keep going? That's where most of us fall out. We've talked about the gym. You get to the gym on January 1st, everybody's gung-ho, the place is packed. The statistics say that by the 17th of January, the majority of people have quit. So we're going to talk about some ways to get through those humps of self-sabotage, of inconsistency, of objections from other people, and how we can work through those things to get through the entire year working on our goals. Let's start with inconsistency. That is probably one of my biggest issues, is being inconsistent with things. That I say I'm all gung-ho at the beginning, I'm going to do all this, and then I kind of hit and miss and recalibrate and start again the next month and all that kind of thing. I'm sure a lot of you probably deal with that too. I've started thinking about it in the context of discipline versus dedication. Discipline is a kind of a bad word. Discipline is I've got to do it whether I want to do it or not. I've got to be disciplined. I've got to fight against all my urges to not do it and go do it and discipline. But dedication is something different. Dedication is I am dedicated to making this happen. It comes from a different place, where discipline is more of a negative connotation. Dedication seems more positive. Dedication is something that you want to do. You have a desire to do. You're devoted to getting through whatever you have to because you're dedicated to getting to the end and getting to your goal. So stop and think about what you really want. Is this a goal you really want that you can dedicate yourself to? It's kind of a promise to yourself more so than a discipline of beating yourself over the head. Try and go from a place of dedication and say, I have promised myself I'm going to do this, so I'm going to keep this promise to myself. Another big area that we struggle with is self-sabotage, where we get up and we're going to go exercise, or we get up and we're going to work on a project, and it's kind of a pain versus pleasure thing. If we look at it as the exercise is the pain we have to go through to get to the pleasure of having a healthier body, or cooking a meal at home with healthy foods versus going out and driving through a drive-through and getting something that's not good for us. We look at the cooking part as the pain and the drive-through as the pleasure, when we really need to look at it the opposite way. Because temporarily we get the pleasure of sitting on the couch instead of putting on our sneakers and going to the gym. That is a temporary pleasure, we think, because we're not going through the aggravation, the time, the commitment of going to the gym. But in the long run, is it really pleasure? Because then after that momentary pleasure, we've got the pain of regret, because the next day we look back and go, well, I didn't go yesterday, I better go today. And then it gets back to the discipline of making yourself go instead of doing something that you want to do, because the pleasure is at the end. The pleasure is after you get to your goal. But you can use the dedication and the pleasure of going through what you have to go through and committing to the things you have to commit to, like cooking your meal at home. That food, honestly, is going to taste a lot better. So you're actually, even though the cooking might feel like a pain, the flavor of the food is going to be much more pleasurable than getting out in your car and going to a drive-through and getting some dried up hamburger and french fries. So we really need to think about our thoughts about pain and pleasure. What am I actually giving myself? Because our whole goal in life is to avoid pain. Our whole mental mindset is to do whatever gets us out of pain or discomfort or a bad situation or something we don't like doing. But sometimes we have to push through those things to get to the pleasure of reaching a goal. So we have to think of the long-term pleasure as opposed to the temporary pleasure of wimping out and not doing what we said we were going to do, because then you're beating yourself up. And that's a long-term pain as opposed to a short-term pain. Sometimes it's not inconsistency or self-sabotage. Sometimes it's resistance. We're just in our head, we're going, this is going to be too hard. This is too hard. I don't want to go through it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to put forth the effort. It's too hard. First of all, ask yourself, is this something you really want to do? Because if it's something you really want to do, if it's a goal you really want to reach, you can push through that resistance pretty easily by looking at your goal. That's one of the reasons we do the vision board, is to keep in front of you the things that you're working for, the feelings you're working for, the attitude you're working for, the things that you want to get to will push you through that resistance. But if it's something that you really don't want to do, if it's something that maybe you put on your goal list as something that maybe somebody else thinks you should do, or you think you should do to please somebody else, you're going to meet a lot of resistance because it's not something you really want to do. But when it's a goal that's really aligned with your values and your purpose of what you want to accomplish, then pushing through resistance is not that hard. Think about the end result. That's what a lot of this is based on, is just think about the end result. And sometimes that's difficult. It's hard because we don't have the end result. We know we've got to do the things we've got to do, take those steps we talked about last week to get to that end goal. So when you meet up against that resistance of yourself saying, this is too hard, I don't want to do it, think about, what do you want? Do you want that end goal? Because if you do, you'll get up and do those things that you need to do to get to it. Another thing that stops a lot of us is fear. It could be just fear of failure, fear of putting yourself out there and trying something new, and then you don't do it very well, or you fail at it to start with, and that fear of what other people think, that fear of I'm not going to look good in front of other people, or that fear of just disappointing yourself. Fear, a lot of people have used the acronym false evidence appearing real. Fear a lot of times is things that we've just made up in our head. Fear is a lot of times things that never come to happen. Most of the things we worry about, most of the things we fear, don't actually ever happen. If you have a fear of public speaking, but it's part of what you're trying to do, you're trying to create a business, or you're trying to create some sort of goal that you need to speak in front of people, or you need to make phone calls to get in touch with people, you have to push past that fear. Courage is not having fear. Most courageous people, you can ask any person who's been in a battle, any person who's been in the military, any person who's been in a really tough situation, there's fear. But you have to look past that and think, is this real? Is this really something that's going to happen? Like if you're afraid of speaking in front of people, what's your fear? Think it all the way through. What's the worst thing that can happen? If to you the worst thing that can happen is they all laugh at you and don't take you seriously, or you're trying to be funny and they don't laugh at you, and that's a failure, what is that biggest fear? Play it all the way through in your mind. If the worst thing happens, are you going to survive it? Most of the time the answer is yes, you are going to survive it. And it's worth it to get through those situations that you're afraid of, because once you conquer each one of those things, you get more confident and less fear. You get more courage and less fear. Being courageous doesn't mean you don't have fear. Being courageous means I have some fear, but I'm going to do it anyway and see if my fears really come true. Most of the time they don't. There have been numerous studies done about fear and worry and the things that we mull over in our mind that keep us from pushing forward and doing the things we want to do. Most of those studies, all of those studies, say that the great majority of the things we fear and worry about do not come to happen. So keep those things in mind. When fear is the thing that's kind of got you frozen, think all the way through. What's the worst thing that can happen, and can I survive that? Most of the time you can. And most of the time, it's not even nearly as bad as you think it's going to be. And you learn that you're a strong person and you can get through a lot. The last thing we're going to do is talk about the peanut gallery. Those people watching you. People in your life, people at your work, people that you run across that may object to what you're doing or may try to somehow sabotage what you're doing. First of all, for the people around you, you should be able to explain to them what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. I have this dream of being a traveling nurse. I have this dream of being a public speaker. I have this dream of starting this business, and this year that's what I'm going to be working on. Well, that may take some time away from those people. It may take some of your attention away from those people closest to you. But if you stay in contact with them, let them know how it's going, let them know what's going on, and tell them you need their support. You don't need their pushback. You need their support so that you can accomplish your dreams. Most of the time, the people close to you will support you. And if they don't, that's another opportunity for growth on your part. Are you going to let the opinions of other people keep you from doing the things that you truly want to do in your heart? There are other people at your job or in your social circle that may think you're crazy for what you're trying to do. They may bring up objections and say, you can't do that. You have to get some thick skin and some boundaries around yourself of who you're going to listen to and who you're not going to listen to, because you are the only person you can listen to, because you're the only one that can do it. You're not dependent on those people to pay your bills. You're not dependent on those people to get you to your goals. You are the person that has to do it. So you have to learn to block out those objections from other people and learn that they will probably be cheering you on at some point, because they'll see that you pushed through all those things and you did accomplish what you wanted to do. When someone comes to you with an objection, tell them thank you, I appreciate your concern, and just keep going. And if they continue and they just want to be a real pain, we can always pull out, bless your heart, and just keep moving, because your stopping is not helping or hurting them, but your stopping is hurting you. Staying motivated is not about being perfect. Staying motivated is not about doing exactly everything every single day, exactly like you have it on your little planner. None of us are going to do that. But staying motivated is continuing to show up, even when it's hard. Looking at your dedication, your devotion to yourself, your dedication to your goals, and keeping the end result in mind. We always have to keep that end result in mind. If a track star is going out to run a marathon, or run a 100-yard dash, or run a, I don't know, 5K, whatever somebody's going out to do in an athletic pursuit, what are they looking at? What are football players looking at? First of all, they're looking at that 10 yards they're trying to get, but the big ultimate goal is the goal line. That's what we have to keep our eyes on. When those players get knocked down, they get back up, get that ball, and keep going towards their goal. So that's what we have to do in our personal life, and keep the peanut gallery at bay. Listen to the people who are supporting you, and just keep going. Last week we talked about little steps. All you have to do is keep taking those little steps, and you will eventually get to where you're going. It may not go exactly the way you planned. It may go better than you planned. But if you stop, you'll never get there. Thanks for joining us for this series. We'll be glad to see you again next week. And let me know in the comments section what your goals are. Tell me one goal that you're trying to achieve this coming year. And we'll be there to help cheer you on, help you along. If you have any questions, any other comments you want to make, please be sure and share those with us. We want to be able to give you the support that you need while we're making 2025 our best year yet. Thanks for joining us. See you next week.
Y'all come back now. Here.